This time I'd like to yield 5 minutes to my colleague from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is
Thornberry.
recognized for
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the gentleman from Michigan yielding it. Madam Speaker, I think it's important also to express my appreciation to the gentleman from Michigan who has served on this committee for the last 8 years, including as chairman of the committee and for the last 4 years as a ranking member of the committee. The contributions he has made in that capacity to the country will never be fully known, but those of us on the committee, I think, do appreciate the considerable work that he has done and the contributions he has made. It's unfortunate that the last bill on which he will help manage time on the floor is this bill. I don't see how any member can come and congratulate ourselves on finally getting an intelligence authorization bill to the floor that doesn't even have a classified annex to it. It doesn't seem to me to be a real bill at all. Unfortunately, and to no fault of the chairman, who's been struggling to get a bill to the floor for months, years actually, more than a year, it's not his fault, but this is not a real bill. Madam Speaker, as a matter of fact, the history of this bill is rather pitiful. It was reported out of the committee in June of 2009, but then for 8 months you couldn't find time to bring it to the floor. Now, why was that? It wasn't like we had a lot of other pressing business for 8 months that prevented this bill from coming to the floor. It was because the Speaker set off a firestorm and a controversy about when she was briefed on interrogations and what she knew and when she knew it. And then, to defend herself, she charged that the CIA lies to us or misleads us all the time. Well, then the bill could not be brought to the floor because there had to be a way found to protect the Speaker. And so 8 months later, it finally comes to the floor, and then it takes 2 rules to get it to the floor because there was a provision added in the manager's amendment, again, to prosecute CIA people, to hold them to a higher standard of accountability than all the law enforcement folks around the country. So they had to go back to the drawing board. And now 7 months after that, we are brought this kind of a shell bill and asked to rubber stamp on the last day of the session what the Senate has done. As I say, Madam Speaker, I don't think there's much to be proud of here. On the notification provision that we've heard so much about, it does very little. And I think it is sad in a lot of ways that the majority walked away from the truly bipartisan compromise of a couple years ago that would raise the bar and require any administration to give this Congress more information. Instead, we have this token language which does very little. And yet, Madam Speaker, as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center testified last week before the Senate, we have had more attempted attacks on our homeland over the past year than at any time since the attacks of 9/11. And so I think what is particularly unfortunate is what this bill does not do. This bill does nothing to prevent Guantanamo detainees from being brought here to the mainland of the United States. And yet, tomorrow, the end of the fiscal year, tomorrow, all of the existing statutory prohibitions on bringing those terrorists here to the mainland expire. This bill was an opportunity to do something about it. This bill says nothing about releasing detainees who end up returning to the fight and come back attacking and sometimes killing our soldiers around the world. This bill does nothing about foreign terrorists being told that they have the right to remain silent even before we get the information we need from them to prevent the next attack, even though this House has voted on a bipartisan basis that they are not entitled to be told they can remain silent before we get the information we need. That's not in this bill. This bill does nothing to try to resolve the issues of whether detainees should be tried in military or civilian courts. And yet those are some of the very issues that the American people want to see resolved. For you see, Madam Speaker, for the last several months, House Republicans have been listening to people and asking them what they would like to see done in Congress. And we've heard lots of information about not letting taxes go up, about restraining spending, repealing the health care bill. But in national security, the things we heard and the things that are in the Pledge to America talk about bringing detainees to the United States and about not letting them be released prematurely so that they return to the fight, and not caring more about their rights than about the rights of the lives of Americans that we tried to prevent.
Gentleman's time has expired.
We could do a lot better than this bill, Madam Speaker, and it should be rejected.